What if I told you that something as simple as a spoonful of cinnamon could land you in the emergency room? Or worse? Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I need to talk to you about something that's been bothering me for years, something that seems innocent, fun even, but has a much darker side than most people realize. We've all seen them. Food challenges. They pop up on our feeds constantly. People swallowing spoonfuls of cinnamon, biting into the world's hottest peppers, or doing things with food that would make your grandmother faint. And yeah, they can be entertaining. But here's what the algorithm doesn't show you in those highlight reels: the ambulance rides, the hospital visits, and the lives that have been forever changed. Today, we're diving deep into the hidden world of food challenge injuries, and trust me, what you're about to learn will change how you see that harmless trend forever. The medical reality behind the laughs. Let's start with something that shocked me when I first discovered it. According to medical researchers and emergency room physicians, food challenges aren't just causing embarrassing moments, they're causing real, documented medical emergencies. Take the cinnamon challenge. You know the one: swallow a tablespoon of ground cinnamon without water. Sounds simple, right? Well, the irritating, fine particulate substance commonly leads to coughing, choking, and vomiting, making this dare a high aspiration risk. But here's the terrifying part that most people don't know. In rat models, aspiration of cinnamon leads to inflammatory changes, and ultimately fibrotic changes. That means permanent lung scarring. But cinnamon is just the beginning. The medical literature is filled with case studies of food challenge injuries. At least 15 children under age 12 have died as a result of attempting various social media challenges, and while not all were food-related, the pattern is clear. What starts as entertainment can end in tragedy. Emergency room physicians have documented cases of chemical burns from extreme spice challenges, choking incidents from dry powder ingestion, and even at least one teenager died of a diphenhydramine overdose while participating in the challenge involving medications disguised as food challenges. And here's something that'll make you think twice: social media challenges make teens and young adults susceptible to these viral internet challenges and accidents because of their developing brains and susceptibility to peer pressure. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. It's just harmless fun. Come on, you might say, millions of people do these challenges and they're fine. You're being dramatic. It's just entertainment. People have been doing stupid dares forever. This is nothing new. And you know what? You're not entirely wrong. The vast majority of people who attempt food challenges don't end up in the hospital. Most walk away with nothing more than a funny story and maybe a sore throat. There's also something to be said for the community aspect. These challenges bring people together, create shared experiences, and yeah, they can be genuinely entertaining. Some have even argued that they're a form of modern-day rite of passage, a way for young people to test their limits and prove themselves to their peers. Plus, let's be honest, humans have always done risky things for entertainment. From medieval court jesters to circus performers to extreme sports, risk-taking for spectacle isn't new. Food challenges could be seen as just the latest evolution of this age-old human tendency. And here's where it gets interesting, because both sides have valid points. The question isn't whether food challenges are universally dangerous or universally safe. The question is, what's changed that's making them potentially more harmful now? Why the risk has evolved? Here's where things get really fascinating and concerning. The danger isn't just in the challenges themselves. It's in how social media has fundamentally changed the game. Think about it this way: in the past, if you wanted to do something stupid and dangerous, you did it with maybe a few friends watching. Now, you're performing for potentially millions of viewers, and the pressure to create viral content has created a sort of arms race of extremity. Picture this: you're a teenager. You see someone get 100,000 views for eating a Carolina Reaper pepper. But that's old news now. So you think, what if I eat 2 Carolina Reapers? Then someone else thinks, what if I eat them while doing a handstand? Before you know it, what started as a simple dare has evolved into something genuinely dangerous. Tide recently released a PSA in which New England Patriots tight end Rob Gronkowski warns against ingesting Tide Pods. As with many things in life, if Gronk thinks something is a bad idea, it probably is. The fact that a major corporation had to create a PSA featuring a celebrity to tell people not to eat laundry detergent tells you everything you need to know about how far we've come. But there's a deeper psychological component here. The influence of social media among adolescent peer groups can be a powerful change agent, and when it comes to eating behaviors, that influence can be particularly strong. Young people are literally rewiring their relationship with food and risk through these platforms. Real synthesis here is this: food challenges aren't inherently evil, but the context in which they exist now, the pressure for viral content, the algorithmic amplification of extreme behavior, the removal of traditional safety nets like adult supervision, has created a perfect storm where harmless fun can quickly become life-threatening. The deeper questions: what this reveals about us. But let's zoom out for a moment. What does our fascination with food challenges tell us about ourselves? About our culture? About what we're willing to risk for attention? I think it reveals something profound about human nature in the digital age. We're social creatures who crave connection and validation, but we're living in a world where that connection often feels artificial, mediated through screens and algorithms. Food challenges offer something raw, immediate, and visceral, a way to feel truly alive and connected to others, even if it's through shared suffering. And maybe that's not entirely bad. Maybe there's something valuable in pushing our limits, in proving to ourselves and others that we can endure discomfort. The question is, at what point does healthy risk-taking become dangerous self-harm? Here's something that keeps me up at night. Are we teaching an entire generation that their worth is measured by their willingness to hurt themselves for entertainment? And if so, what does that say about the world we're creating? The platform response: too little, too late. Now, you might be wondering, what are the platforms doing about this? And the answer is complicated. Social media has a long history of encouraging people to do dangerous things for views, and the platforms have been slow to respond. Some have implemented policies against dangerous challenges, but enforcement is inconsistent and often reactive rather than proactive. The problem is that platforms profit from engagement, and dangerous content is often highly engaging. It's a classic conflict of interest. The very thing that makes these challenges harmful, their shocking, extreme nature, is also what makes them profitable for the platforms. And here's the kicker: by the time platforms crack down on one dangerous trend, 3 new ones have already taken its place. It's like playing whack-a-mole with people's lives. The ripple effects, beyond the individual. But the impact goes beyond just the people attempting these challenges. Think about the families who have to watch their loved ones suffer, the emergency room staff who have to treat these preventable injuries, the younger siblings who see their older brothers and sisters getting attention for dangerous behavior. One slip in judgment could put your child in the hospital or worse. That's not hyperbole. That's the reality that thousands of families face when viral challenges go wrong. We're also seeing a normalization of self-harm disguised as entertainment. What message are we sending when we reward people for hurting themselves? What kind of culture are we creating? The evolution of risk, from playground to platform. You know, when I was growing up, dangerous dares happened on playgrounds, in backyards, maybe at summer camp. There was usually an adult nearby, and the audience was limited to whoever happened to be around. The stakes were social embarrassment, not internet infamy. Now, the playground is global, the audience is limitless, and the pressure to escalate is constant. Every failed challenge is preserved forever, every successful one raises the bar for the next person. And here's something really interesting. Research shows that exposure to social media food messages can influence adolescent eating behaviors in complex ways. These challenges aren't happening in a vacuum, they're part of a broader ecosystem of food-related content that's shaping how young people think about eating, risk, and their bodies. The science of why we watch. But let's be honest with ourselves for a moment. Why do we watch these videos? What is it about seeing someone suffer through a food challenge that entertains us? There's something primal about it. Maybe it's the same instinct that made ancient Romans flock to the Colosseum, or that makes us slow down to look at car accidents. There's a fascination with human limits, with watching someone push themselves to the breaking point. But there's also something deeply empathetic about it. When we watch someone struggle through a challenge, we're not just viewers, we're participants. We feel their pain, share their struggle, experience their triumph or failure alongside them. The uncomfortable truth is that we're all complicit in this system. Every view, every like, every share sends a signal that this content is valuable, that it should be made, that the risk is worth the reward. The psychology of viral validation. Let's talk about the people actually doing these challenges. What drives someone to potentially harm themselves for internet points? For many, especially young people, social media validation feels incredibly real and important. It's not just the internet. It's their social world, their source of identity and connection. A viral video can change someone's life, open doors, create opportunities. But here's the dark side. The same psychological mechanisms that make positive viral content feel so rewarding also make dangerous content feel worth the risk. The dopamine hit from going viral can be so powerful that it overrides basic self-preservation instincts. I've talked to creators who have done dangerous challenges, and almost all of them say the same thing: I didn't think it would be that bad. There's a fundamental disconnect between the perceived risk and the actual risk, amplified by the pressure to create content. The aftermath, when the cameras stop rolling. But what happens after the video ends? After the views are counted and the ad revenue is split? What happens to the people who are left dealing with the consequences? Large doses of Benadryl can cause high heart rates, which can trigger an arrhythmia, stroke, seizure, or cardiac arrest. These aren't abstract medical terms, they're life-altering events that can happen to real people with real families who love them. I think about the parents who have to explain to their other children why their sibling is in the hospital, the friends who have to live with the guilt of encouraging someone to take a dangerous challenge, the creators who have to grapple with the unintended consequences of their content. And then there are the copycat effects. When one person gets seriously hurt doing a challenge, it doesn't necessarily stop others from trying. Sometimes it just adds to the mystique, the sense that this is something extreme and attention-worthy. The technology behind the trend. Let's get technical for a moment. The algorithms that power social media platforms are designed to maximize engagement, and nothing drives engagement quite like extreme content. The more shocking, the more likely it is to be shared, commented on, and watched to completion. This creates what experts call a race to the bottom. Content creators are incentivized to push boundaries because moderate content gets buried in the algorithm. The system literally rewards dangerous behavior. Think about that for a second. We've created a technological system that financially incentivizes young people to hurt themselves. That's not an accident or an unintended consequence. That's the logical result of prioritizing engagement over safety. The global perspective. This isn't just an American problem or a Western problem. Food challenges have gone global, and with them, the associated risks. Different cultures have different food traditions, different spices, different ideas about what constitutes a reasonable challenge. But the underlying human psychology is universal. The desire for recognition, for belonging, for pushing limits, these are human constants that transcend cultural boundaries. What's particularly concerning is how challenges that might be relatively safe in one cultural context can become dangerous when adopted by people who don't understand the cultural knowledge and safety practices that originally surrounded them. The economic engine behind the danger? Let's talk about money for a minute, because at the end of the day, dangerous food challenges exist because they're profitable, not just for the creators, but for the platforms, the advertisers, and the entire ecosystem that surrounds viral content. Every view on a dangerous challenge video generates revenue for multiple parties. The creator gets their share, the platform gets its cut, and the advertisers get eyeballs on their products. There's a whole economy built around content that can genuinely harm people. This raises some serious ethical questions. Should platforms be allowed to profit from content that puts people at risk? Should advertisers be supporting creators who engage in dangerous behavior? Should we, as viewers, be contributing to a system that incentivizes self-harm? The parental dilemma. If you're a parent watching this, you're probably wondering, how do I protect my kid from this? How do I navigate a world where dangerous behavior is not just normalized, but celebrated? The challenge is that traditional parenting strategies don't really apply here. You can't just ban social media. Well, you can try, but good luck. You can't control what your kids see when they're at friends' houses or at school. And here's the really tricky part: some of the psychological needs that drive kids to attempt dangerous challenges, the need for recognition, for belonging, for proving themselves, are actually healthy and normal. The problem is the outlets available to them. At least 15 children under age 12 have died as a result of attempting various social media challenges. That's not a statistic, that's 15 families destroyed, 15 sets of parents who have to live with unimaginable loss. The educational gap. Here's something that really bothers me. We teach kids about stranger danger, about looking both ways before crossing the street, about not touching hot stoves. But we don't teach them about the very real dangers of viral content and social media challenges. We assume that because kids are digital natives, they inherently understand these platforms and their risks. But that's like assuming that because someone can drive a car, they understand automotive engineering. Being able to use technology doesn't mean understanding its psychological and social impacts. Maybe it's time for media literacy to become as fundamental as reading and writing. Maybe we need to teach kids not just how to consume content, but how to think critically about why certain content exists and what incentives drive its creation. The evolutionary mismatch. From an evolutionary perspective, humans aren't designed for the modern social media environment. Our brains evolved to care about the opinions of maybe 150 people in our tribe, not millions of strangers on the internet. The same psychological mechanisms that helped our ancestors survive, the desire to fit in, to prove our worth, to take calculated risks, can become maladaptive in an environment where the stakes are artificially amplified and the audience is impossibly large. This means that the people attempting dangerous challenges aren't necessarily reckless or stupid. They're responding to evolutionary drives in an environment that those drives weren't designed for. The mental health connection. There's also a connection between dangerous social media challenges and mental health that we need to talk about. The influence of social media among adolescent peer groups can be a powerful change agent, and not always in positive ways. For some people, especially those struggling with depression, anxiety, or other mental health issues, dangerous challenges can become a form of self-harm disguised as entertainment. The physical pain provides a temporary escape from emotional pain, and the social validation provides a temporary boost to self-worth. This doesn't mean that everyone who attempts a food challenge is struggling with mental health, but it does mean that we need to be more thoughtful about how we discuss and respond to these behaviors. The long-term health consequences. Let's talk about something that doesn't get enough attention: the long-term health consequences of food challenges. Aspiration of cinnamon leads to inflammatory changes and ultimately fibrotic changes. That's permanent lung damage that can affect someone for the rest of their life. Extreme spice challenges can cause lasting damage to the digestive system. Repeated exposure to capsaicin at high concentrations can lead to chronic pain conditions, digestive issues, and other health problems that persist long after the video has been forgotten. These aren't just temporary discomforts we're talking about. These are potentially life-altering health consequences that can affect someone's quality of life for decades. The peer pressure amplifier. Social media has essentially created a peer pressure amplifier. Instead of facing pressure from just your immediate friend group, you're now facing pressure from an invisible audience of potentially millions of people. And here's the thing about invisible audiences: they're often more demanding than real ones. When you can't see the people you're trying to impress, your imagination fills in the gaps, often creating an audience that's more critical and more demanding than any real group would be. This creates a vicious cycle where each challenge has to be more extreme than the last to capture attention, and the people attempting them are responding to a level of peer pressure that's unprecedented in human history. The copycat effect. There's a well-documented phenomenon in psychology called the copycat effect, where publicizing dangerous behavior actually increases the likelihood that others will engage in similar behavior. This is particularly concerning when it comes to food challenges, because each iteration tends to be more extreme than the last. What started as eating a spoonful of cinnamon has evolved into consuming dangerous quantities of extremely hot peppers, household chemicals, and other substances that can cause serious harm. This raises questions about media responsibility. Should platforms be promoting content that's likely to inspire copycat behavior? Should creators be considering the potential impact of their content on impressionable viewers? The generational divide. There's a fundamental generational divide in how people understand and respond to social media challenges. For older generations, the idea of potentially harming yourself for internet fame seems incomprehensible. For younger generations, it's just another form of social interaction. This gap in understanding makes it difficult to address the problem effectively. Parents and educators who don't understand the social dynamics of social media are often ineffective at helping young people navigate these challenges safely. Maybe what we need is more dialogue between generations, not lectures from older to younger, but genuine conversations about values, risk, and what constitutes meaningful achievement in the digital age. The attention economy. At its core, dangerous food challenges are a product of what economists call the attention economy, a system where human attention is the scarce resource that everyone is competing for. In this economy, content that captures attention is valuable regardless of its impact on human well-being. This creates perverse incentives where harm can be profitable and safety can be boring. The attention economy affects far more than just food challenges. It influences news, entertainment, politics, and virtually every aspect of our digital lives. Understanding this system is crucial to understanding why dangerous content proliferates. The role of algorithms. The algorithms that determine what content gets seen are not neutral. They're designed to maximize engagement, which often means promoting content that provokes strong emotional reactions, including shock, outrage, and concern. This means that dangerous content has a built-in advantage in the algorithmic ecosystem. It's more likely to be shared, more likely to generate comments, and more likely to keep people watching, all of which signal to the algorithm that it's good content. Addressing the problem of dangerous challenges may require fundamental changes to how these algorithms work, prioritizing user well-being over engagement metrics. The global reach of local dangers. One of the most concerning aspects of social media food challenges is how they can spread dangerous practices across cultural and geographical boundaries without the accompanying cultural knowledge that might make them safer. For example, a spice that might be used safely in traditional cooking within a specific culture can become dangerous when consumed in large quantities by people who don't understand its proper usage and potential risks. We're seeing traditional food wisdom, the kind of knowledge that gets passed down through generations about how to handle certain ingredients safely, get lost in the viral translation process. The question of personal responsibility. This brings us to a difficult question. Where does personal responsibility begin and end in the context of social media challenges? On one hand, individuals choose to participate in these challenges. They're not being forced to eat dangerous substances or perform risky behaviors. On the other hand, they're operating within a system that's designed to encourage and reward such behavior. The reality is probably somewhere in between. Personal responsibility matters, but so does the environment we create for people to make decisions within. We can hold individuals accountable while also working to create systems that encourage better choices. The future of food challenges. So where do we go from here? Are food challenges destined to become increasingly dangerous, or is there a path towards safer forms of entertainment and social connection? I think there are reasons for both hope and concern. On the hopeful side, we're seeing increased awareness of the dangers, better platform policies, and more conversations about digital wellness. On the concerning side, the fundamental incentive structures that drive dangerous content haven't really changed. As long as extreme content is more profitable than moderate content, there will be pressure to push boundaries. Maybe what we need is innovation in the space, new forms of challenges that provide the social connection and validation that people crave without the physical risks. Challenges that are difficult but not dangerous, that test skills rather than pain tolerance. The deeper cultural questions. But stepping back even further, what do food challenges reveal about our culture and our values? What does it say about us that we are willing to risk our health for the approval of strangers? Maybe it reflects a deeper crisis of meaning in modern life. In a world where traditional sources of identity and community have weakened, people are looking for new ways to prove their worth and find their place. The human needs that drive people to attempt dangerous challenges, the need for recognition, for belonging, for pushing limits, are legitimate and important. The question is whether we can find healthier ways to meet those needs. This isn't just about individual choices, it's about the kind of society we want to create. Do we want to be a culture that celebrates self-harm for entertainment, or do we want to find better ways to celebrate human achievement and potential? The call to action. So what can we do about this? How do we address a problem that's simultaneously individual and systemic, psychological and technological, cultural and economic? I think it requires action on multiple levels. As individuals, we can be more mindful about the content we consume and share. As parents and educators, we can have more open conversations about digital wellness and media literacy. As citizens, we can advocate for better platform policies and regulations. But maybe most importantly, we can start to think more critically about the systems we're participating in and the values we're endorsing with our clicks, views, and shares. The good news is that we're not powerless here. Every time we choose to watch educational content over exploitative content, every time we support creators who prioritize safety over shock value, every time we have a thoughtful conversation about these issues, we're contributing to positive change. Conclusion: the choice we face. At the end of the day, the story of food challenges is really a story about human nature in the digital age. It's about our eternal desire for connection, recognition, and meaning, and how those desires interact with new technologies and new forms of media. The challenges themselves aren't the real problem, they're a symptom of deeper issues around how we've structured our attention economy, our social media platforms, and our cultural values. I remain hopeful that we can figure this out. Humans are remarkably adaptable, and we have a history of learning to use new technologies more wisely over time. But that adaptation isn't automatic. It requires conscious effort, difficult conversations, and sometimes painful acknowledgement of unintended consequences. The next time you see a food challenge video, I want you to think about everything we've discussed today. Think about the person behind the camera, the systems that incentivize that content, and the role you play as a viewer in that ecosystem. Because ultimately, the future of food challenges and social media more broadly isn't just up to the platforms or the creators. It's up to all of us. And that brings me to the biggest question of all. In a world where our attention is the most valuable commodity, how do we choose to spend it? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.